Hello and welcome back to my channel. On this episode of Unwhitewashed History, I'm going to make a bunch of you uncomfortable because I'm coming for the Founding Fathers. One in particular, who used to be a hero of mine, Thomas Jefferson. Kill your heroes. We have to talk about the practice of breeding human beings for sale in this country, and how commonplace it was, and the fact that Thomas Jefferson even helped enact a law that ended the transatlantic slave trade, not to end slavery, but to simply ensure that his business was profitable, because he even said that selling slaves was more profitable than tobacco for him. That was a founding father of ours saying selling actual human beings was more profitable, and the way in which they went about doing this and the degrees in which they did this is absolutely horrific and has to be talked about and brought into the light. So let's start off with why in the Americas they started selling slaves instead of importing them from Africa, which was terrible within itself. Tobacco, after the wars with Britain and 1812 and all the other wars, it became less profitable for tobacco in places like Virginia. So it was commonplace to breed slaves up in places like Virginia, Maryland, even South Carolina, and then sell them down in further southern states like Louisiana, Florida, Georgia, places like that. And what they would do is several things. When girls hit the age of 13, they would be checked for their fertility. If they were deemed fertile, the kindest version of this is they would be married off to a man that they deemed would make a good brood. It wasn't a love match, it wasn't a kindness match. It was, this guy looks strong, she looks strong, put them together, have them have kids, as many kids as they can get out of it, and then sell those kids. And the sale of those kids would often start at the age of 6 to 8 when they were deemed eligible to work on the farm. The more horrific version, well, there's a couple of horrific versions. The more horrific version that we're going to discuss now is, this is hard, where they would pick they had like stud farms, and they would have women that they deemed were good and fertile, and they had men that they deemed were that, and they would just breed them. And how they would do that is they would put bags over both of their heads, and then they would force them to assault the woman. The woman was often tied down, and slave owners did not care if this person that they were forcing to do this was their mother, their sister, their daughter, their cousin, their best friend. They did not care. They just wanted the resulting child that they could then sell. They had them assault people so that they could sell their children. The other way, and these children were deemed worth more, was slave masters who assaulted women on the plantation would result in lighter-skinned babies. Lighter-skinned babies were deemed more desirable, and they were often used as house slaves, and the cycle would repeat. The prime example of this is Sally Hemings, who was a third generation slave. Her grandmother was brought over. She gave birth to what I believe would be Thomas Jefferson's wife's aunt, aunt or grandma, aunt would be, her aunt. And then that woman was then assaulted, and she gave birth to Sally Hemings, who was Thomas Jefferson's wife's sister. And then Thomas Jefferson had many, many children with Sally Hemings, who were very white passing. In fact, a lot of people often talked about the resemblance between Sally Hemings and Thomas Jefferson's wife, and the resemblance between Thomas Jefferson's children with Sally Hemings and the Hemings family. So, ew. But those children were deemed worth more. So not only would they get the ability to assault the women, but they would then get a very profitable child out of the mix, who would again then be sold at the age of 6 and 8. They were selling their own blood. And to ensure that they always were born into slavery, they actually changed the law in the early 1600s that slave women, their children were born into slavery instead of the other way around, because it used to be that men, the children would be linked to the man, so if the man was free, the child would be free. But because of many reasons, including keeping black men on the farm, and the fact that a lot of women were being assaulted by white men, which were resulting in lighter-skinned, very valuable children, they needed the children that were born into slavery from the mother to also be born into slavery. So they actually changed the law to ensure that their own offspring would be treated the same, their own bloodline, their own children. And they were often mistreated by the mistresses of the house. I mean, I read an account of a mistress who actually beheaded a baby of her husband's because she was jealous of the slave working in the house that gave birth to the child, which is absolutely horrific. But she was punished, the mistress of the house was punished, not because she killed the baby, but solely because she killed the property and cost him money. Because he didn't care about his offspring, he cared about the money he could get for his lighter-skinned offspring, which is where we see a lot of colorism today, because it's a byproduct of white supremacy. So that's gross. But yeah, we bred human beings for the sole purpose of selling them. And the lighter skinned they were, the higher they reached at market. So we should own that and talk about it and understand that that system still oppresses black people to this day. And I will see you later.